Good afternoon to you, our dear viewers. Welcome back to this week's episode of the Youth Roundtable. My name is Douglas Onen, and this week we're discussing a very interesting topic and something that I think for us as young people, as we age towards 2026 general elections, it's imperative that we have this conversation. And today we are interrogating the youth perspectives. One that is focusing on the opposition party's youth representation in special interest groups elections, something that has been cutting across the waves, and young people have been having this conversation that have majorly been seeing one political party dominating the sphere of representation when it comes to special interest groups representation, and that is the national resistance movement. But the question is, where are other opposition parties? Joining me to discuss this very interesting conversation and topic is a panel of distinguished ladies and gentlemen who will help us put perspective to this conversation. So in no particular order, allow me go ahead and introduce my guests, but also give them a chance to say hello and dive straight into the conversation. From my immediate left, I am joined by a gentleman from the People's Front for Freedom. He goes by the names of Patrick Buyondo. Patrick Buyondo is the chair of the Youth League of the PFF Party. You're most welcome.
Thank you, Douglas. It's great to be here. Good afternoon to you all.
Good afternoon. Thank you again for joining us. Right next to Mr. Patrick Buyondo, we are joined by Miss Nakalanzi Melody, a usual suspect on the show. We're very happy to have you here.
It's always a pleasure being here, Drake, and happy to deliberate on issues of the country.
Thank you. Last but not least, we are joined by Mr. Kyajja Claver Peter. You're most welcome, a student of Makerere University.
Thank you so much, Drake. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's always nice being here, yet to learn and share what I have with myself, with the rest of the people.
Thank you. Gentlemen and lady, as I've earlier on made an introduction, last year, 2024, the Electoral Commission issued a roadmap that captured that the special interest groups would be conducting its elections in the month of August. And before the close of the month of August, we saw a communication from the Electoral Commission saying that the elections of the special interest groups has been postponed to the early month of October. That is between 2nd to 3rd of October. But that being said, majority of the aspirants in these special interest groups elections or in these structures are majorly young people from the national resistance movement, majority that we have been seeing. And a question that I would like us to understand and intersect in this conversation is, where are the opposition parties? What is the issue? Are we as the opposition parties participating in the process, or it's now a prerequisite of the national resistance movement? But before we get into that, allow me to begin with you, Patrick. As a chair of the People's Front for Freedom, the question of representation of young people is very critical. Before we get into the discussion of the heart of the matter of our discussion today, let us first have a history of where we come from as a country in terms of our democracy, but also the involvement of the special interest groups as young people.
Well, thank you very much, and again, it's a pleasure to be here. I'll first talk about the People's Front for Freedom. It's a new party, newly established, and we did not get an opportunity to participate in the elections of the special interest groups because at the time we got our certificate, the elections had already commenced. The process had already commenced, and we did not participate in the elections. But that having said, we talk of our history and where we come from as a country. In the People's Front for Freedom, I'm responsible for the special interest groups, specifically the youth. But I must say, our history as a country does not favor these democratic processes. And I don't expect that in any form, these elections or the process that leads to these elections is a just process in whatever way it is being arranged by Electoral Commission and so on. You talked of the time frames that were given by Electoral Commission being extended to a later date. I'm not very conversant with those dates because at the time when the Electoral Commission issued the roadmap, myself and others were in a prison in Kyajja, having been picked from Kenya as youth who had gone to participate in a small engagement amongst ourselves. However, I must state that the question of opposition and participation of opposition political parties versus the ruling party in these processes is a question of whether we have opposition and ruling. In the PFF, we do not believe that there is opposition or ruling party. We believe that there are only two categories of people, that there are a group that is oppressed and a group that is oppressing. Therefore, there are many factors that I will dive into that are hindering these processes from being well engaged in by other players in politics, and that's why you're seeing it's only the NRM that is participating in them. And even within the NRM, you're seeing the troubles that they are having themselves as the youth to getting involved in these processes. Part of this is the monetization of politics that is going around the country. We are in a political season. You can see what's happening. A lot of monies are being spent. You can imagine for somebody to stand for a youth position, just a small position of a youth, having to put up a billboard. Putting up a billboard in the streets to advertise your candidature costs around 3 million a month or even more. So that alone is a lot of money. Now, a youth from Bwais, where I come from, or Katanga, or wherever, who does not have that kind of money will not get involved in these processes. And it does not matter what political party they come from. What matters is that they are Ugandan, they are youth, and they are a registered voter. They are entitled to being part of these processes. So for me, I would not want to look at the political parties, but I would rather look at the entire perspective as it is, as Ugandans, as youths, why we are not getting involved in these processes. I've talked about money. 2, there's a lot of political insecurity and intimidation. I'll give an example of the earlier elections that we had, previously the youth elections that we had, how violent they were. Youth were removed from the voters' register. Police got involved in these processes. We saw gangs coming from wherever they came from, chasing away registered voters and taking charge of the entire election. It's as though the Electoral Commission is not in charge of this election. So it's really unfortunate, but it's where we are as a country, and we need to have an honest discussion about this. Because when we look at the youth politics, it does not end there. It spreads all over into the national politics, away from the youth politics. Intimidation, we have many youth behind bars. Of late, we are seeing the many youth of the National Unity Platform that are being picked from streets and are taken to prisons and unknown locations, and so on and so forth. So intimidation and political insecurity is a second reason why people opt away from these processes. Thirdly, the youth and people under the age of 30 make the biggest population in this country. We make 78% of the population as far as the statistics of Uganda Bureau of Statistics say in 2024. We make 78% of the population. Personally, I am a believer that special interest groups, and specifically the youth, when we talk of the youth living around the person with disabilities, the elderly, and so on, I look at this as an affirmative action form. We are the majority. I don't know why we still have to be put in that category, that we have to have a special election for us, yet we are the majority. Why can't we take on direct seats? Because we have youth that are educated, youth that are learned and understand how things must be done. So the people in government, at our age, we are managing ministries. They were ministers. They were presidents and so on. So they were managing government. Why can't the youth take charge of the country in which they are the majority? So I think that is also one reason why some youth opt away from this. Fourthly and lastly is that there is barrier of information and civic awareness among the young people. Government has intentionally killed knowledge spread among our generation. At a time when I went to school, in secondary school or high school, we used to have a course called civics, and it used to give us knowledge about current affairs, things happening in the country, but all of that was swept away. Now you find that we are in a generation where, first of all, youth do not read, they are not enriching themselves with knowledge and information of what to do, what it takes to be a leader, and so on, but also about our country, our histories, and so on. But also, do the youth know that these elections are happening? Or it's only those of us who are politically involved that have that understanding that there's this election and how the processes move, and so on. So those questions have to be put on table and we understand better. But the point I'm trying to make is that there is no knowledge. We have a population of youth that are learned. They have gone to school. Sorry, they have gone to school, but they are not learned. They do not know these things. They just fall into them out of excitement. Oh, there's an election. They go there. They don't know what is needed. Some of them are not registered voters. Some of them are just removed from the register, like I said, but they don't know what to do.
All right, thank you. Claver, allow me get to you. My brother Patrick highlights 4 key issues. He starts his submission by saying, in the People's Front for Freedom, they don't believe that there is the ruling party and then there's opposition. They believe that there is the oppressed group and the oppressing group. And in his submission, he highlights 4 issues that he thinks are among the reasons as to why we see in his words, the oppressed group is not in the process. And he highlights issues to do with monetization of politics, political insecurity and intimidation. He says that majority of the population, which are young people, why do we then categorize them as special interest groups and yet they're majority? Why couldn't they be in the normal category of elections? And lastly, the barrier of information. Issues that I think we're going to interrogate further in this conversation. But an area of interest, which is monetization of politics, that I would like to engage on that note, is a notion that, which of course we know is a fact, that the Political Parties Act goes ahead that provides that parties who subscribe to IPOD and who have majority representation in Parliament receive a significant number of funds from the government. And of course, we know that the National Resistance Movement, as a party, receives the majority of the funds as a party because it has a majority of representation. Now, in terms of financial muscle and strength, the National Resistance Movement might have a stronger backing, unlike other parties. Does that therefore give the National Resistance Movement an edge over other political parties to have more representation of young people in these political processes?
Thank you so much, my brother Drake. When you mentioned that the National Resistance Movement definitely gets the bigger share of what the government gives to the political parties, and you ask whether it really qualifies them to have the much representation they do, I would not at an instant say yes. Let me draw some context here. I did a bit of Googling and just not going very far. In 2021 to 2026, that is the 10th Parliament, right? The Central Regional Youth MP was Chirabo Agnes from the NRM. The Northern Region Youth MP was Boniface Okot from the NRM. The Eastern Regional Youth MP was Bernard Odoy from the NRM. Western was Edson Rugumayo from the NRM. And then we also had the National Female Youth MP, Fiona Nyamutoro, being from the NRM as well. In as much as the NRM, yes, gets that big a figure, I want to think that even other parties as well, regardless of how small the figure may be, they could have had a say, or they could have had representation, though it may not be the same as that of the national resistance movement, but at least we could have seen one of the regions being represented by, let me say, the National Unity Platform. Let me say, by then, we still had FDC very vibrant. Let me say, I don't know, then we had JEMA. It could have been at least one of them. So I don't want so much to say that because the NRM has a stronger financial muscle, then it definitely qualifies to have the representation it does. My question is on the transparency in the system. My question is so much on the fairness or the transparency that comes from the Electoral Commission. Many times I say our Electoral Commission is not independent. Our Electoral Commission is not independent. The boss of the Electoral Commission, Justice Simon Byabakama, is appointed by the president, Mr. Museveni. And with the way things are run in Uganda, I do not see a day coming that the Electoral Commission boss is going to do anything that is not in favor of the national resistance movement.
Isn't that, as I would say, quite fallacious?
No, not fallacious, as you may say, but to a larger extent, viewers out there and the people on this panel will agree with me. Yes, there are cases where we see the National Unity Platform, people come through and then they win elections. We see other parties come through and they win elections. But let us zero down the conversation to National Youth Members of Parliament. In a system organized by Uganda's Electoral Commission, just like my brother mentioned, there is no civic awareness. My brother mentioned, yes, monetization. My brother mentioned intimidation and all that.
Just on that point, you say that you're going to zero it down to members of parliament. In the previous parliament, the 9th parliament, we had at least one member from the FDC, the Honorable Anna Deke, who in that parliament, among the youth representatives, came from an opposition party. So what went wrong?
What went wrong? I want to mention this, that there is usually calculation in this. There is usually calculation while, elections happen. The national resistance movement, there are areas where it does not have as much support. But it happened in the 9th parliament, right? Did it happen again in the 10th parliament? So should we assume that the national resistance movement became much more loved in the rest for the 10th parliament than it was previously? I thought that the graph of the love for the national resistance movement has only been regressive.
But numbers say otherwise. But let me hold you on that. I'll get back to you. Let me get to you, Melody. The conversation right now is on the point of representation of young people in special interest groups elections. And my brother Claver just zeroed down the conversation to representation in parliament. The members of parliament that we have in the current parliament now, in the likes of Okot Boniface, Bernard Odoye, Fiona Nyamithoro, Roy Ogumayo, among others, provide that all those individuals that are representing the young people in the various regions are from the national resistance movement. And the question that I posed to Claver, that I also want to traverse it to you. The national resistance movement has, over years, ever since the introduction of the multi-party system, seemed to have a grip over the elections of young people. An argument that he raises, that there is no transparency in the system and there is no fairness when it comes with the Electoral Commission. Do you agree with this statement? And if so, why? If not, why?
Okay. All right. Thank you, Drake. There's no one who will distance themselves from the fact that NRM has irregularities and there's a lot of favoritism for them. The fact that they call themselves the majority party means that they have a bigger percentage of almost everything, or of almost every positions that are being are being held in the country. If you go to members of parliament, if you go to ministers, and everywhere, they have the biggest numbers. So if it comes to the youth, it then becomes problematic that actually in the youth, maybe in the youth segment is where we have more people, more young people that subscribe to different parties, which he calls the oppressed. People that subscribe to opposition parties are very many at the youth level. That would mean that we would have a bigger representation of the youth at that level. If you say national youth members of parliament, it would be ideal that we have at least a member from each party. There's a time I was with friends and we were discussing about things to do with a minority vote. A minority vote is when you have people, is when you have maybe an election, we have Drake get 50%, we have Claver get 40%, we have Melody get 20%. The idea is to say that we have at least 20% get a certain kind of representation. That even when Drake has won the election, yes, he is going to be the member of parliament. But at the time when also Claver came in the election, it means he had something to bring on table. Therefore, we would have such an individual get a position to make sure that that the interests of the people that voted for him most likely have a certain sort of representation that makes sure that that their voices are heard, or maybe his ideas and also the ideas of the people that voted for him get a certain sort of representation. People will say that is not democracy, but that is democracy in the sense that the voice of everyone in that regard is actually listened to and is like put into consideration at the end of the day. If you see, Claver tells you that we have had a lot of that in the previous parliament, we have had only NRM youth members of parliament. What that means is that the environment that NRM has put for you is an environment that favors the people that, see, he's from PFF. If he comes to stand for a position, he will tell you that he has been to prison. It means the intimidation is too much. The environment is not favorable for him to actually come out and say that I can run for a position. He has a life. He has parents that care for him. He cannot just come out and say that he is putting his entire life there. We know freedom comes at a cost, but not at the cost of you losing your life, at the expense of the others that are being favored for positions like those.
Are you therefore then asserting that because of the existence of political insecurity and intimidation is the reason as to why we are seeing a decline in the so-called opposition youth being participating in the process?
Exactly. That even when opposition youth members wanted to contest for those positions, they are not sure that they are safe in such an election. They are scared of the insecurities that are most likely going to happen, but not even just the insecurities. They do not have that financial capacity to go and run for those positions. He tells you that you need at least 3 million to put a poster at a billboard in Kampala. A certain youth like him, coming from maybe a district like Isinjiro, like mine, does not have that money yet. Maybe his parents are even still supporting him and do not have that much money to give him. But also, I think that like I was still talking about the environment that NRM puts is an environment that favors only those that come from their side. Even when you go to maybe like the grassroots, you will find out that people do not know that these positions can be held by opposition leaders. By people from the opposition. People will think that these are positions that belong to people that are from NRM. If you see how the structures are, you will see that there is an NRM National Youth Council, something like that this belongs to only NRM. People will even start mistaking it to National Youth Member of Parliament.
But isn't that therefore a prerequisite of every political party to establish its structures right from the beginning?
Do the political parties then have the capacity to do that?
That's a conversation that we're supposed to have, because you have some money dashed to you from your
Is it enough in comparison to what NRM has then?
But as political parties, you have the prerequisite to go ahead and fundraise and
even if they do the fundraising, the needs that they have are most likely higher than what they are supposed to cover in comparison to what the ruling party has. It has capacity to get all the resources that they have. But if you look at these other people, they are most likely limited to some of the, even when they want to do a fundraising, they will most likely be stopped, which makes it hard for them to then exist in such an environment.
You have something to say?
Yes, I was going to add, in a political space that is only, marred by splashing money here and there, there is no day you're going to see a political party that does not have such a strong muscle come through. So the biggest problem now roots back to when Uganda's politics started being monetized. At the moment, people will be open to you. No one will want to listen to your manifesto. No one will want to listen to how good, the plans you have for them are. People will ask you for money. And then when you look at the system of the people that vote for the National Youth MPs, my sister here mentioned that people back there probably mistake them for being NRM, NRM cartels and so on. So people will actually not get into the delegate system. And by the time these delegates reach the level of voting for the national youth MPs, there is no FDC guy, there is no NUP guy, there is no, party this, party the other. You're going to find 9 out of 10 people coming from the NRM. And what exactly do you expect as the result? So it is quite a mess that is very deep rooted from the structures. Do not challenge other parties from building, do not challenge other parties to building party structures here and there. Uganda has how many districts now?
140 something.
140 something. National Unity Platform does not have that muscle. PFF does not have that muscle. The NRM has been in power for the last 40 years. They have looted the nation, and they still not my allegations. They have taken money from from Uganda, and then they're still taking the biggest share. They definitely have to outshine the rest of the parties because it is a question of who has the bigger financial muscle.
I just want to add something. You earlier talked of Anne Adek having been a member of a youth MP. But the extraordinary circumstances in which somebody like Anne can become an MP at that level. The process she went through, if you talk to Anne and she tells you what she went through to become an MP at that level, colleagues put in prison, some of them injured, maimed, and so on, just because she was in an election, youth election. So it is costly at that level. But the exceptional circumstances where someone is aggressive and assertive and they keep on pushing and they eventually make it, the support is there. Because at Anne's time, she took time to give civic awareness to her voters and so on, and educated them and mobilized for the vote, and she made it. But it was not a walkover. 2, you talk of political parties organizing to fundraise and get funds. My dear, it is what should be happening on paper. But practically, it is not possible. Today, we cannot hold a rally, say in Masaka, to talk to people and mobilize support. Just mobilize support to tell them, please come and support the PFF. We can't do that. We are talking of fundraising money, but we cannot even go to people and tell them our ideology, our agenda, and so on, because the system does not want that to happen. The system is not in favor of any organized group to that capacity. And that's why you see, you will find many no posters around Kampala, but when you reach Isingiro, you will not find them there. You'll only find one party, NRM. Not because there are no candidates or PFF candidates, but it is intentional. They are put down to emphasize the point that NRM is the majority party. So organizing is also difficult in such an environment which is politically hostile, that you are on a rally, before it even starts, tear gas and so on, people are put in prison. But it is also intended to put fear into the population. So whenever the youth try to come out and do something, because they have that knowledge behind them that, oh, look at this, they came and picked this person when we were seeing and took him in a drone. He has never been seen again, or is in some prison somewhere. He has never been taken to court. They now share away because of that fear put into them by the system. So everything that is happening is well planned and deliberate. Political fundraising should be something simple. I mean, the business community should be able to give opposition or oppressed people money to go on with their agenda, provided it is something legal. That they're not going to do something illegal, funding terrorism or things of that kind. Doing politics and political organization is not illegal, but the system is not in favor of it.
Okay. And something that would like you to add on that point is, from your argument that we have a system that in one way, according to paper, provides that political parties are supposed to go ahead and have an aspect of resource mobilization and fundraising. And you bring in an example of the private sector getting involved in the process. But let us look at the environment around the involvement, even of the private sector, relating it to your argument of intimidation and insecurity. How many private entities are actually willing to get involved in the process? Because you could get involved and the next, you're shut down, or you're having a lot of, they're fighting you as an entity. So is our environment able enough to have the private sectors involved to enable the opposition parties push the youth wing to get involved in the process?
Well, there are 3 or 4 tools that any oppressive regime uses, and one of them is fear and intimidation. And they will do anything possible to try and spread it to the population that, look here, if you do this, we shall do this. And this is an example. I'll use the simplest example of COVID-19. We saw different players coming to government, giving their form of support, money, food, and so on. So that was given to government. By then, we were still in the FDC. If FDC at that time had put in place an office somewhere to collect items that would help people in COVID, government would not allow it. Because one, yes, they are collecting the items, but it is a tool of political mobilization. The NRM is not in favor of any other entity growing under its watch. They would not allow you to mobilize, be it resources. And that's why you see, even when the business sector, these guys give us money, but they come underground. They give you the money and say, please do not mention my name anywhere. We support what you're doing. Now, for example, the PFF stands for ideas of federalism. There are people who support federalism and come and give us the funds. They give us the monies. But underground, they do not want to be seen by the system or being heard of to doing anything of that kind. I'll give the slightest example. The PFF headquarters are sitting on plot 6 Katonga Road. That's not our property. That's the property of the one Honorable Chapa Karuhanga, who is now living in exile, partly because he offered that space for a political party, for a political pressure group or whatever, to use it. But now he's living in exile and his entire family. So there are consequences that come with supporting groups like us who are in opposition and so on. And the system will make it very clear and use you as an example to the rest that may want to support.
Okay, interesting and quite unfortunate at the same time. Something that I would like us to interrogate before we go into the break, which is information, something that you highlight. Melody, my brother here, Patrick, mentioned in his first submission that there's an issue of barrier of information, that the government intentionally went ahead and scrapped off civics in secondary education, what some of us know as political education. And his argument is that this scrapping off of such a powerful tool of offering knowledge to the younger generation has left the generation that's supposed to now, of course, the majority of us who are now eligible to vote, to have zero knowledge and information about our civic rights and what a vote means. And it has now been zeroed down. A vote has been zeroed down to a t-shirt, packet of salt, 1,000 shillings, 2,000 shillings, because we are not aware of what our civic rights are. Let us get your thoughts on the issue of lack of information and the impact of scrapping off of the civics has had on our generation. A question that Claver would also like you to respond.
Okay, I think I'll start from just something that is recent. The president recently said that courses like political science, courses like social work are irrelevant. I am a social work student, for God's sake. I have studied the course for 4 years. I know what this course can do for people. I know what it can do for society. This is not a course that people just study just for the sake, just to attain a degree. But this is a course that is intended to change people's lives. If you look at things that we study, we basically look at how to build communities, how to develop communities, how to encourage empowerment. The president's problem then is we think these individuals that have that level of information are most likely going to go out to society and tell the others to get empowered. Political science. This is the man that studied political science himself. Why doesn't he want other people to study it? He was a student at Makerere, for God's sake. Why do you think he doesn't want you to have the same knowledge?
The argument that the president has is oftentimes when people such as yourself who study such courses come out as job seekers and job creators. That is his argument.
It is very simple. Our idea is not basically to even get jobs. If you look at the nature of courses that we study, we want to see a better society. If you look at what social workers do, these are people that you will find in refugee camps. These are people you will find in the most marginalized communities in society. If you see social workers that came to do work in Africa centuries ago, these are people that came to change what Africa was looking like and make it look better. It is not like we are going to be job seekers. Apparently, we do not even look for those jobs in government. You're going to be doing a project just to make sure that society changes, not even have a permanent job. That is basically the nature of social work. I was still telling you about political science. Political science is something that everyone actually in this country should study, because if you look at the nature of governance that the president gives us, it is generally on politics. If you look at the history of Europe, you will see that Museveni is doing exactly what the people of France in those 18-something were doing. If you zero down and see to the 19-something, he is doing the same. He has done almost everything to make sure that people are intimidated, to make sure that people have no say. That is why he then thinks that even
on the show.
I just wish he could listen to this. Yeah. And even if he listened, I think I would maybe be abducted or something. Okay, that's just for the joke. But honestly, even when you have the say, they do not care what you are able to say. He subscribes to PPF. But when he comes, PFF, if he comes out as a young person to say something that concerns people of his village or of his district, he will most likely not be listened to. Even when the ones that have the education and can come out to speak, want to speak, they will not be listened to, and that is why you see most of them getting jailed. But even when they do not get jailed, what they put on table is not listened to. Then at the time when you have people that then have the positions, last night I was watching the aspirants of the youth leaders, and it is and it is really absurd. And I was asking people, is this basically about NRM? And I told me it is basically about mobilization for the mass party. And I'm like, it is really sad that in what they then want to stand for, there is something like youth, and only what they care for is mobilizing for the president to get more votes and more votes. I'm like, then why don't you just call it foot soldiers of the president other than just calling it NRM Youth League? And then put youth in the picture, yet you're just, going to the field to get votes for the president. That's something that was sad. I had a lot of sudden issues yesterday night, and but it's well. So, direct to respond to your question, basically, on civic engagement and why we think this, the implication of all this scrapping and the criticization of most of the courses that give people knowledge is because the president and the people in the NRM do not want you to understand things that they are doing, to understand things that are costing you as a person, as a youth, things that will stop you from voting for the person that you want, and rather just buy you for a packet of salt. But also, they have made the environment so bad that you would choose to go for a packet of salt rather than go for someone that comes and tells you an ideology that will push you for the next 5 or 10 years.
Right. Thank you. Claver.
Is starting off from where she stopped.
I've been to some schools, and then their mottos, and knowledge is power. I want to think whoever came up with that saying really meant it. If you took a study from all, oppressors, go to the Europe, particularly go to France, come to Uganda, look at all those countries that have had that bad or funny history, I could say. All those oppressors have always used this tool of barring the public or the masses from having as much information. When you compare the education we are having with the education my father had. Anyway, my father didn't go to school, but my father's age mates, it is way substandard. Way substandard. The matters we are taught in those lecture rooms or the things we learn in those classrooms in secondary school, primary school, are less relevant to the matters that are oppressing people outside there. So I want to think this is a tool they have used as a government, and it does not yield in 1 year, but after some time, I think it is yielding for them. I think it is yielding for them. When they choose to prioritize sciences at the expense of arts, not only to students, but he's also disillusioning the teachers. If you compared what those ladies and gentlemen that teach arts with that the ladies and gentlemen that teach sciences get, very much I see many of them jumping to do ICT, to teach ICT, because yes, they could do that very fast and they get the hefty pay. But the gist of national matters is the other side. Just like she mentioned, we are going to learn through what the president is actually pushing so much the side. We are going to learn how to make society better, how to challenge the status quo, how to challenge the status quo. Whenever he sees me positioning myself to challenge the status quo, probably he gets butterflies in the stomach. And that is what they are much afraid of. And, you know, to wrap up the whole thing, the lack of information, lack of civic awareness has actually got us trailing very much. If someone does not get chance to reach the level of university, they are as good as someone that hasn't gone to school when it comes to matters of, you know, nation building. They're as good as someone that hasn't gone to school. When I look at villages there, or areas outside Kampala, or areas that are not as urban as Kampala, people don't care. For as long as someone is getting, I don't know, going to their garden and getting something, lunch comes, they have, I think, cassava, and then they can get supper. They are not so much concerned. And that is the person who is going to be given, I don't know, a pack of salt that he's going to use in a week and it's done, and then at the cost of his vote. He's going to be given 2,000, he's going to be given a shirt, he's going to be given very, very cheap things, and then they sell themselves for the next 5 years. They give themselves in for tormentation for the next 5 years. So fact is, lack of civic awareness has really got us trailing. And for some reason, I would say this without restraint in any case, in any way. It is looking like it is intentional by the government to derail us of information or ability to challenge status quo. And it is a tool that very many oppressors have used. Something I feel that if you took an initiative as Drake, if I took an initiative as Claver, my sister here, Melody, my brother there, Patrick, if he could as well take it incumbent on himself to educate the 10 people around him, to educate the 10 people on the other side, just like he mentioned, that the way the FDC, you know, member of parliament in the youth member of parliament in the ninth house managed to get there was because she struggled, she strained and educated her people. For some reason, I think if we educate the people, we strain ourselves to educate the people, regardless of how miniature the result will be, but at least we shall have. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. The discussion today is questioning why we have very minimal.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create, and publish digital media, or to access and use computers, other electronic devices, and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Welcome back from the break. This is the Youth Roundtable, right on Civic Space TV. My name is Douglas Onen, and before we went into the break, we've been discussing a very interesting conversation, interrogating why opposition political parties, particularly the young people in these political parties, are not participating, but also representing in the special interest groups elections. And as I've earlier on introduced, I am joined by a panel of distinguished ladies and gentlemen in Patrick, Melody, Claver, and right now Masawi Ivan. Ivan, allow me to begin with you on this half of the show. An interesting aspect that we raised in the first half of the show, we had discussions around why are we not seeing young people from other political parties participating in the process? The reason that was traversed in the conversation was one, monetization of politics, political insecurity and intimidation. There was an issue of barrier of information, an issue of transparency in the system, fairness. There's no fairness that is coming from the EC, among other reasons that were raised. But I would like us now to talk about something that is interesting in relation to what we had in the first half of the show. A question relating to the appealingness of opposition parties. Young people would raise an argument and say, opposition political parties at this point in time, and history at the moment, is that opposition parties are not appealing. You have squabbles in FDC, with now having another party coming off the FDC, which is PFF. You have squabbles in NUP, the process young people are arguing that their process of coming up with the flag bearers is questionable. You have political parties like the Democratic Party, who also have issues. In a nutshell, there is an argument that is saying that opposition parties are not appealing at the moment. And the only viable option is to go to the National Resistance Movement, who would offer you a platform to represent and participate in the special interest group elections. Let us debunk on that notion. Ivan.
Drake, thank you. I would like to appreciate my fellow panelists I've been following and they show grounds. Before I retreat to where you started the question from, I want to put it clear to you that no one produces a child. I want my child to be in opposition. I want my child never. No one is born to be in the side that doesn't have power. Every human being is born to reach a certain potential. And the potential is always matched with ability, with training, with skills, with opportunity. Now, going back to your question where you started from, I saw my good friend Melody try to illustrate what George Orwell in the Animal Farm puts in the setting of a Ugandan setting of characters about the kind of environment created and now how they are being marginalized as social workers. I don't think even us who studied engineering or science, you've always seen intern doctors in Uganda crying on the street, lousy. After internship, some have even never got employment. So the reason when you ask me appealingness, I first don't want to discuss the National Youth Council as an institution because I've been part of it. and I know how toothless it has been because I've been there twice. But I also represent, I'm delegated by the FDC at the Multi-Party Forum, and I'm also their delegate at the IOP. We have seen how toothless also even the NRM counterparts in the youth league are, that we sit with them, but when we agree with something to go and at least push, because they are in power, how unproductive they have been. And so you would never expect the National Youth Council that should be a nursery bed for seeing that it produces the country leaders to be effective. The whole question of appealingness and purpose is a discussion that would be so wide, because there is no way, ever since parties moved from to the multi-party system in 2005, once we took away what people were enjoying in PAFO, in reform agenda, having leaders voted on basics of competence, of basics of qualification, on basis of pragmatism, and now voting a regional youth MP because he's a son to the MP of Isingiro. The father Ramrama is a minister. Tango Bernard Odoi because he's a nephew to Tanga, the EC of NRM. You will be someone competitive because your aunt is a former speaker. When we began voting people based on there are few opportunities, my child has no job, let me put her in parliament. You could always argue that the debate of nature and nurture about politicians is radical, because there are a majority of politicians who are born and know they are politicians. Yeah? But the biggest crisis we are having as not Uganda, even at my workplace, even everywhere, is that we are having many followers and very few leaders. In a crisis of where followers have dominated the leaders, whatever you see in the, it is not about the opposition. I don't think people in NRM who are occupying, I read the Daily Monitor of Tuesday, they state how the NRM has massively won special interest groups. But what are the functionalities of this leadership? That after voting, you vote regional MPs and you'll never function again until the next election. Most of these people in the NRM, I participated in the recent NYC as Secretary for Finance in Mbari. The NRM Treasury pays for their candidates at every stage. From village, they give a 20K, at parish a 40, at the sub-county 100K, at the district 200K. So most of the people who be participating are looking for that small allowance that will come as being a flag bearer of the NRM, 100K, and not necessarily that they were in this, they have an agenda to represent younger people. They have seen their dropouts, they have no, they were looking at the small token. When you try to reach them to support you, the challenge you get is first, their district leadership says, having a non-NRM person in the structure, you're making the money they receive reduce. Secondly, you're compromising their image at the secretariat for them to think that they are underperforming. So anything, I participated in an election where the NRM chairman and RDC have to hide delegates on the day of voting. You come when they have hidden delegates. So what you do, also have to play the same method. Arrest people, feed them. You move out as if you're from a certain prison to just line up and go away. You have to play by the tricks of the day. They are hiding delegates, you also need to hide. They threaten people, you're the ones causing our jobs, we don't get enough money because you're painting us that now Bali is blue, what? So with all those deficiencies, is that where the country is, we have acquired that President Museveni, I've always told you here that his selfish manner is that He wants very many followers and he's the only leader. As long as he has very many mediocres around him, people who can just shout. This is why he can equal anyone to anyone. You don't need to be highly learned to work with him. You bring someone who never went to school and you sit on the same table and he gives you the same assignment and expects the same results from both of you. So, back to the topic. The appealingness of political parties in Uganda is still a very big distance to be, because most of the people, even in political parties, come to use them as vehicles to political positions. Very few people, even in the NRM, are there because they love NRM. Most are there because where they were going to run is NRM, which has opportunity to win. Most of the young people are in NRM because they have had it is the easiest to win in college vote. Secondly, it comes with, like I told you, no one is born to be in opposition. Everybody would be in government because it has the opportunity. It is where if you're showing talent and excellence, the eye catches you quickly. Those are all advantages people get from being in government. But with an environment created to see that the country has more mobilizers than leaders, the country has more followers. Look at all parties. They are having the same crisis. You can get a party and find there are not more than 3-5 people who can speak. And you see, this party's ideology is very clear. Because the issue of being in a party is about replicating energies. That where the party president is not, I can replicate the same energy in the same message, in the same packaging, and the same delivery. But in a party where people, because he has missed a card, then his journey with that party has ended. Because the other person has done something that offends him, then his reason with that party has ended. Melody pointed at the debate yesterday. The law in Uganda states that the youth should be between 18 to 30 years. Unfortunately, the NRM extends between 30 to 35, 18 to 35. But these were people who are past 30 years in that. When I saw them have a debate that even a nursery school can't organize, the issue would be the agenda of the youth in political parties. Because even at IOP, even multi-party youth forum, we have said as long as young people, we don't have an agenda and we are always driven as followers, as escorts. Because you would sit and look at a debate and say the candidates who are chest pumping, what are they? Because when you're NRM with chairman, you're in power, you need to now represent ideas of all youth in the country. Whether on PDM, whether on what, you're in power. You need to have ideas. I don't think that because I'm FDC, if I saw my neighbor who is NRM youth doing well, it makes me angry. Or think that I've lost that. Because all of us as leaders, we exist to see that we serve people to be better. Not to see that we deny people opportunity to be better because it will make us weaker. The human race is selfish, but I don't think any leader who is sensible admires being in the current state Ugandans have been put.
Right.
Where you front yourself, but it sometimes makes me think that people in NRM are very dull, some are very docile. You can't really begin having a country where a youth agenda, a country that is youthful in nature, is reduced to always seeing people discuss as followers because the president loves him. What if Museveni died today night? Where will Chichoncho go? Because she's claiming the president. If Museveni dies, will they count her as one of the orphans and will she be on the will to receive anything or any property that... We should think in a way of how we are going to solve the problems of today, because you saw in the New Vision on Monday, public service 3 months ago released the 81 jobs. They got 81,000 applicants, and this was via online. Online application. Now imagine if it was physical.
Let me just hold you there and bring in Patrick. Patrick, Ivan brings in an interesting component that you see, no one wants to be on the losing end. And something that stood out in his submission is the fact that for young people at the moment to win the college vote, you need to affiliate with the national resistance movement. And that is why we are seeing a plethora of young people involved in the national resistance movement and in the process. A question that he answers also is in regards to the opposition being appealing. And it's the same question I'd like to pose on your end. What is it that is wrong with the opposition party, particularly with PFF, that wouldn't make it be appealing to young people? Or what is appealing about the PFF that is seeing a couple of young people getting involved in the process, but not getting involved in the special interest groups elections, irrespective of the fact that you mentioned that PFF had led registration and therefore you were excluded from the process?
Thank you. Just a small one from what my brother talked of. He talked of toothlessness of these youth platforms, IO, National Youth Council, and so on. And I would like to relate it to the participation of opposition parties and so on, particularly the PFF where I come from. Just yesterday we declared that we will not have a presidential candidate in this particular election. And it's not because we don't have candidates or people who can vie for presidency, but it is intentional because we know we are going for a fiasco of sorts. But then we shall have a manifesto with our candidates that will be sold out to the population to see what our intentions as a party are for this country and what we plan to do for the country. Now, why I'm saying that, he talks of toothlessness, but my question is, yes, youth win these positions, they get to parliament, they get where, but where does power lie in this country? Who holds the power to make decisions? Really, if we take this office away from the benefits that come with it, the monies and good vehicles and so on, do we have the power to make decisions that are binding? And my answer is no, because of the reasons I'll give. To answer your question and relating it to all of this, when we got multi-party dispensation in 2004, if I'm not mistaken, 2004-06 there, Mr. Museveni and the movement then did not agree to multi-party system. And that's why you see Museveni has been very open about it. Even when he goes to rallies, he does not recognize that some areas have MPs that are led by parties that are not of the NRM. You've heard him in Nakaseke saying, oh, you voted for an MP here who is a bad MP. So they are bad members of parliament and good members of parliament. Whether it is a member of parliament without any form of knowledge of an area or anything to do, but for as long as they are part of the movement or an NRM, they are a good member of parliament. Whether it is a good legislator like the Honorable Semuju, but when he's in the opposition or among the oppressed, he's a bad member of parliament. Now, it is not surprising that a narrative is set that opposition, and I hate to use it as opposition, that the oppressed are not appealing to the young people, and that's why they opt to go to the movement. Now, this is an election, and let me first take you back to the NRM primaries and recent delegates conference. You saw the huge sacks of money that were spread in that election. Now, one of the biggest things that everybody is looking for in this country that is scarce is money. As a country, we are very poor, and everybody will try to run to where it is. I challenge everybody in the NRM to tell us the NRM ideology. What does the NRM believe in? But because the NRM is where the sacks of money are, some people are not strong enough to keep on with the fight away from where the money is. They will go and look for those small bunches and try to be with them and get whatever they can out of it. Some of them are not even there to win the election. They actually know they're not going to win. but provided they'll get a few shillings along the way, along the process, maybe to buy you out of the election and things of that nature, they stick there, but not because of ideology. I talked earlier and said opposition parties have been hindered, and it's deliberate, from organizing and passing over information of what their intentions are, what their ideologies are, and so on. In universities, when I attended university in Makerere, by then we were still in FDC, I was chairman of FDC in Makerere, at least at the time when the University of Makerere allowed political parties to freely participate. And we sold our ideology to the students. And the students went on to vote in their guild elections and jealousy elections, basing on factors that are really important to the students, that are really important to the nation. Because we used to say then that Makerere is Uganda summarized, and I would like to think of all institutions being Uganda summarized. Reason being, in each institution you'll find somebody coming from the central, from the east, from the north, and from the west. They will all come together and bring their thoughts on the table, their cultures and so on table. So it is easy to find somebody and relate and discuss things that are happening in Karamoja, and you know what is happening in Kisoro, and so on, because you're in the same environment as university. But intellectual debate was killed in the universities. Political parties are not allowed, and not only political parties, students are not allowed to associate in any form of association. You cannot have a debate like this to discuss things that matter about our country. Now, a university is not a political party. If a university cannot have such a discussion and enrich its population with this kind of knowledge, how else can political parties, which are categorized as opposition, go out and sell this information to the young people? But I will not criticize government alone, but I'll also bring it back to us, the population, the young people out there. We've not taken the initiative to understand what these political parties stand for. A political party like PFF, which has just come up, the Democratic Front, which has just come up, they all stand for something. There is the Ecological Party of Uganda of the Honorable Muhammad Nseko. They all stand for something.
Common man.
Yes,
My
common man.
friend.
Yes, at least they stand for something. And this other party of Kavereta, what is it? Need. They stand for something. Now, what do you stand for as an individual? You get it? You need to first of all understand yourself. The people running to the NRM, and I must echo this once again, it is not because they understand the ideology of the NRM. It is because of the benefits that somehow come with being associated with NRM, and it's because of the monies. Simply that. Not because of the ideology, because the ideology of the NRM is really not there. The ideology of the NRM is Mr. Museveni and his seat of being president. Provided he's president, everything else is stable.
All right. Melody, listening to the submissions of Ivan and Patrick has made me speechless. The only thing running in my head is poverty. And the fact that majority of the young people, I've just seen a report released that the boda industry now is second to agriculture in terms of employment. Yes. And the Speaker of Parliament has joined the boda industry at Kololo.
Should be transport, not border.
No, it's border.
Yeah, and you see, when other nations are celebrating speed trains,
Electric
tech,
something.
we are celebrating mediocrity. And
Followers.
respectfully, I use borders personally, and I am glad it has employed a couple of young people. But the reality is, how much low are we going to stoop as a nation to actually realize that things are bad? That as young people, no matter which political party you affiliate with, if you have majority of people surrounding you poor, you will always stay in the same situation. I know our conversation today is about opposition parties not being involved in the process, but money is a factor that influences all these things. And as he has rightly said it, Ivan says, quote unquote, that the easiest way to win college vote is to be in the NRM. He has just mentioned that the money involved in the process, many of us young people don't have it. And it's only the ruling government that will give you. One factor that dominates that is poverty. We are so poor to the extent that as young people, anyone who gives us so-called bread, we are swayed away with that small token and forget the bigger picture that we're putting our futures at stake. Just speak your mind on that in like a minute or so, and so will you, Claver. Then we put this conversation to hold, because it's actually painful.
Okay. I think, like you said, it is important that every time we are talking about young people, we do not ignore the conversation on what our economics looks like. The fact that we are the biggest group in the biggest population in the country, it makes it important for us that we discuss on something that is important for a developing country like Uganda. The conversation on poverty is something that keeps haunting the country every day. That, like, I think we were reading the same thing apparently. It is actually the speaker that posted that she joined the border community at Kololo, and someone responds that other countries are actually celebrating things like speed trains, electric something, and you're celebrating borders and mediocrity, like you call it. Young people in this country are the most broke people. This is why we have a lot of needs at the time. One, we want to look smart. Two, we need to dress well. We need to travel. We need to be out of the country. We need to get exposed. And you cannot get all this when you do not have money. It means that the bread that will come from this one, maybe regional youth member of parliament or a national youth member of parliament or any MP, is something that someone will buy into, because they are not certain of what their future is, or they are not certain of tomorrow. They are so broke that if you give them 20,000 or take them for lunch at Africana, they will most likely buy into that, because maybe they have had posho and beans, or maybe nuts and rice in their room every day. It means that they will buy into lunch at Africana or at Sheraton because they have not had it for a month. So if someone then comes and says that they are contesting and they are able to take them for lunch for 2 or 3 days at a good place, then they will buy into that, because they want to be at that place anyways, but also want to have a good experience. Young people have a lot of needs, but the issue on poverty then keeps the biggest challenge of the country. That I am here, I have not graduated, I am just done with my degree, but I've literally not found anything that is viable for me to do. The other day, someone calls me and tells me that we have jobs available. I'm like, what jobs do you have? Someone tells me we have hardware, we have restaurant, and we have supermarket. I'm like, okay, that is nice. I'm asking them, how much do you pay? They're like a recruiting company and something like that. And they are not able to explain what exactly they are doing. And I'm like, so if you cannot tell me exactly what you are doing on phone and you're telling me to come to office that I'll start work immediately, then what is the guarantee that I'm going to get that job? Yesterday, I was still talking to a friend. Okay, she's a young girl, refused to study. I'm still talking to her to go back to school, though she doesn't want. She tells me someone calls her to Ntinda and tells her that they want to give her a job. They're asking her to pay 200,000 to get the job. And I'm like, okay. Why don't they get the 200 from your first salary? Or even if, I'm like, okay, I was trying to understand. And I told her, you cannot pay to get a job when you're going to get paid. So like, exactly.
Before even admitted.
She's not sure if she will get the job, and they're telling her to pay 200,000. She does not have it anyways. And I think if she had it, maybe she would have paid. Those people are so convincing, Drake. If you listen to them, You might sell everything that you have and run for them if you do not talk to any other person. So the level of unemployment which transits into poverty is so high in the country that you have a lot of people that have left university, people that graduate every day but cannot find something to do in the country. It goes back to things like having people go to the Middle East, having people go to UAE. They do not have an alternative in Uganda.
And the most unfortunate thing, all these issues that we talk about are tied to the leaders that we put in.
Exactly, because they gave you salt and you voted for them.
Now
This
the salt
person.
is done.
So now that the votes are done and the salt is done, you're most likely not going to get salt anymore, and you have to go to the
You wait the next 5 years suffering,
exactly.
toiling.
Yesterday on the debate, this girl Brenda comes and says she has traveled to many countries in. I'm sorry to pin at her, but it was so hurting. She says she has traveled to many countries in the world, and Uganda has the best service delivery. I just wish Mildred had asked her to elaborate on what service delivery in Uganda looks like and what it looks like in all. I do not know what country she has traveled to. Maybe she has traveled to countries like South Sudan, to maybe DRC, Somalia, and maybe those countries that
she's a neighbor then.
I think that is where she has gone, and she has not gone to countries that have service delivery, to countries that are transitioning to transport that is improved, to countries that have had business that are having imports and exports every day that are important. And she's saying service delivery in the country is good when she is reading reports on corruption.
Maybe she was sarcastic.
No, I do not think she was sarcastic, or maybe she was, okay, I'll not say this on the show. But I think it is so sad that these are the people we are going to vote for positions that can tell you that I don't know if she traveled or if she just left Kampala and went to a place like Isinjiro and said that maybe things are better there, and she thought that is a better country.
For purposes of her own safety, we shall not ask.
Sure.
No, she's a viewer. She watches.
I just wish she
You'll
watches
get
this
feedback.
particular clip, but it was so sad of her. And then you have someone claiming that Uganda has peace because people are in bars at 2 a.m. Have you even found out why those individuals are in bars? Honestly, the definition of peace cannot be that people are not shooting at each other. The country or a community has to have a better definition of peace than people going to bars. We do not know why these individuals are in bars. Maybe they are frustrated, maybe they are depressed, maybe something like that.
The circumstances surrounding.
Exactly. People are not happy that they are in bars. Others also want to go there, but they cannot. I think we need
just a quick analogy. Reports have been released in various newspapers have seen that there's an increase of mental illnesses in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And an aspect of peace relates to peace of mind. How many of us are peaceful in terms of you're happy that you have a roof over your head? Let's not go far. Campus students.
How many
campus
students have
are sleeping hungry?
very many students.
And
As long as you have a percolator in your room and you have water, water is provided for by university. That is all.
We laugh about these things and we say we have peace. Let's just hold it there and bring in Claver. Please speak your mind.
Thank you so much, Drake. It was very interesting listening from my sister here. Have we heard of apathy? Have we heard of disillusionment? I mean, you talked of you put parties at the scale of which party is better than the other and to which party are many people feeling comfortable, joining. You mentioned that the NUP has issues, Rangozan. Yes, the FDC, now there is a faction that has formed the PFF, and many more opposition parties having issues. Are you trying to say that NRM does not have...
It has issues.
It also has issues. But why do you think many people are finding it comfortable there? Actually, it has the most, appalling issues. But many people are finding it comfortable there. Because the NRM has money. Because, yes, they're going to splash money here and there. So I do not want us to weigh political parties on, that of, having issues, wrangles inside, internal wrangles here and there. They are everywhere, and I want to think that National Resistance Movement has the worst of wrangles. But let's go back to what I mentioned as apathy, and it is going to direct us to our involvement in representation, or our involvement in the process of bringing up youth representatives, and it's also going to drive us to poverty, just like Drake mentioned. Today, with the way we do not trust our leaders anymore, the question on my mind is whether I'm going to have lunch. Campus student as I am, the question is whether I will have supper. If I can secure lunch for today, I can secure supper for today, I think tomorrow will worry about itself. I'm not going to stress myself on what has Museveni said, what has President Museveni said. I'm not going to stress myself on what are the proceedings in Parliament, on what is happening where. If I can find a meal for today, I could say we gave up on our leaders. I've interacted with very many people and they have said, we left Uganda to God. It is very disturbing, it's very disheartening that the largest part of the population of Uganda thinks that way. I want to assure you, Drake, my brother mentioned that according to WUBOS, it is 78% of the youth that make up, the entire population. I with no reference will say it is like 1% of the 78. People will help us with that mathematics that are actually interested in matters happening in the country. So that makes me think that what we want to come to life may take a little longer.
But it doesn't matter, we need to push because Uganda is ours.
It may take, yes, true, it may take a little longer, but what am I trying to drive to? We have been disillusioned, we have been, pushed so much to the wall that if you do not have so hard a heart, you're going to struggle, you're going to give up on this whole business, and you're like, let me secure lunch for today, let me secure lunch for tomorrow, or let me secure a meal for today. And what challenges me or what hurts me is the fact that every single day, many people join that faction of, we have left Uganda to God. Let me secure a meal for the day. And whenever that group grows bigger and the group of Drake, the group of the likes of Drake, Patrick, Melody, my brother Ivan here, and myself continues to shrink, we lose sight of what there is in the future. So incumbent on that, I want to implore us to push it to the rest of the people. Let them understand, let them digest the fact that redemption is only going to come with their effort. But poverty, like you mentioned, poverty, very deep as it is in the country, because of poverty, people have given up on involvement in national matters. He's asking himself, is the member of parliament going to get me a meal? Is the national youth, the youth member of parliament I'm electing to parliament going to give me a meal? If they're not going to give me a meal, if they do not care about how my kid is, or if they do not care about, my health, if they do not care about the service provision, just like my sister here mentioned, that someone we expect to be having information said Uganda has the best service provision. I'm beginning to think, just like they mentioned, she has visited DRC and Somalia, and that is where she's doing her benchmarking from. But by the virtue of the fact...
With respect to those countries.
But by the virtue of the fact that that is what a person, we think has information can give, what of myself that is in the village there? So probably those people have given up on things happening here, and then they don't want... In Luganda, we shall say, sagala kumanya tombulira. And whenever they say sagala kumanya tombulira, that is how the NRM gets to edge. They will call you to the corner and they tell you X, Y, Z, A, B, C, D. They will actually not educate you, but give you, a note. They'll be like, present yourself for this, X, Y, Z, A, B, C, D, vote for person X, and that is how NRM gets to edge over us.
As a wind up and concluding remarks here.
Okay, yes. So it has pushed us so much to the wall that we are now apathetic about national matters. We don't want to know anymore. Many people there don't want to know anymore, and they're after what they can secure for the day, and tomorrow shall worry about itself. That is where poverty has pushed us. But then, this is a call to us. I usually tell people that, naturally, 20, 30 years from now, all the people giving us the much headache will be off the face of the earth, and it will be you and myself. But, very sad, We are watching them loot. I shall use the word loot, underline it, put it in block. We are watching them loot and we are doing nothing about it. Fact is, tomorrow is going to come and we shall have nothing for ourselves. So even when it gets very tough, regardless of how miniature your contribution may be, but if she puts something to the table, I put something to the table, he puts something to the table, definitely result is going to come. Thank you so much for listening in. I really pray that we all get ourselves involved in putting things right, because the future is mine and yours, not for the people giving us headache. I will not mention names.
Thank you. Melody, concluding remarks in 60
Okay,
seconds.
thank you for hosting me, Drake. It's always a pleasure being here. I wish on the next show you're going to host, even if I'll not be there, we have a discussion on the big parliament. Today I was reading something and I noticed that countries like China, the US, Kenya have about 20 to 30 ministers, and Uganda has 80. And I'm like, what is the size of Uganda in comparison to all these other countries?
They added districts on Monday.
They are adding districts, so that means we will have a minister
for
maybe a minister for something like new districts, minister for new districts created. I just wish we have a discussion on
they
that
have
next.
150 districts.
Thank you for always having me.
coming.
Thank you. Patrick.
In 2021, we formed the People's Front for Transition. And while we were traversing the country, we found that majority of the people in this country are living in a state that we termed as the failure to thrive. And withstanding youth or not, many people go to bed without a meal. Based on those backgrounds, we are going to see people asking for money when we go out to seek for votes, people going where the money is because they need the money to survive, to get health care, to get what to eat. But I would like to believe that all is not lost. And as I wind up, I just want to call upon our people to be hopeful and to get involved. You know, the mismanagement of politics in any country leaves the country destabilized. Countries like Tunisia, Libya, Somalia were once stable, but the mismanagement of their politics put them to where they were. And mismanagement starts from the population not knowing what is happening. Because we are standing at a danger, you risk not knowing what's happening. So let's try as much as possible, and mainly the youth, to get information, to get to know these things and understand them very, very well. I'd like to thank you, the panelists and the organizers of the show, for hosting me. But I also have to state I am a candidate in Kawempe South. I'm contesting for LC5 Lord Councilorship. I was nominated in the previous week.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And on the PFF ticket. And we will be coming to the people of Kawempe South to sell to them our manifesto and seek their mandate to go and represent them at KCCA. So I thank you very much for hosting me once again. It's been a pleasure being on the show.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure having you too. Ivan.
Drake and the viewers, we argued something about scarcity. Everywhere there is scarcity. The only difference with scarcity in Uganda is that it is so much present. The imbalance is on. It is so there is so much surplus in scarcity that it causes. I've been to Germany. I was in Munich, but I left Munich and went to Landsberg. I passed Augsburg and went to Landsberg, far deep. There were poor people that they were begging from me on the street. It doesn't mean Germany doesn't have poor people. I went to the villages of Landsberg. There are people who also wear shrugged clothes, sleep in fairly small shelter, and they are also broke. The difference that makes Germany from Uganda is that their governments, especially Angela, they worked on seeing that those people reduce. Where there are failures, there are also those who succeed. Even in Uganda here, where youth we are struggling, there are also an inch or a dot of those who, without being in politics, can go hustle and make it. But the issue where I always want to call up young people, especially us who claim to be that we are leaders and we feel hurt. The biggest challenge we are struggling with is government has escaped from the lives of citizens. They have put citizens in one corner and they have put a padlock to one door, and then they regulate you from within as chicken. They give which feed will you eat, which nutrients do we mix in the feed. Today you need some sunlight, they open for you a ventilator. There is no way we could avoid discussion, because naturally, even the educated today, she has pointed Chichoncho. Chichoncho is just one of the examples of highly educated people who think like that. But there are very many educated people who think porridge. They have no clue of where they are coming from, where they are going. They are just where they are by accident. They don't have a reflection of where Uganda should be going and where it has come from. They only know one thing: Museveni is the president, Museveni is Uganda, Uganda is Museveni. They are in a cult, a formation of being in a temple where they only know the high priest. They fellowship a cult. So, to fellow young people listening, I've always told you that we choose to be what we want. If you want to be a mediocre, you choose to settle for it. You be comfortable. But when you watch even us who are in opposition to maybe think we don't want money, I have friends I joined politics with at the university level. Some are RDCs, some are deputy RDCs, some who are more miserable than misery, the word itself. But they claim that they are mobilizers of NRM, and I don't shy away from them that they crossed. But I only want them to use their crossing to improve their livelihood and those in a way that is equitable. In 2016, the FDC candidate had one of the most theme for a campaign that I always felt attached to: equal opportunity and prosperity for all. The biggest issues that are facing Uganda, that we have had a clique that has reduced others, that they are not equal. Whether in political parties is where you have some parties in opposition, you be like associations. NRM is also like a family project, that you will find a vice chairman, a vice chairperson making noise of irregularities, but they can't be reported anywhere. They lose and they are just given a sponge, cotton, and some liniment to massage themselves. If we can't create a country where even equity is at the basics of admissions in schools, the results will just be waiting for end result will be, or once you get out of school, inequities will have dominated everything, whether employment, whether even when you get the employment, they will dominate salary scales. You will have a president who begins to minimize his colleagues in the arts profession, because now he has got used to being a president. He has forgotten he's also a cattle keeper, he's an actor. There will be a lot of people despising others because the purpose of the country's direction is lost. People, we have got used to survival that we think it is normal. You when you go to other countries where you see a big part of the population is not living by survival, that you know that Uganda, we are irregular in whatever we are in. But we have got our population, everybody now thinks being a follower is a full-time job. If you wake up, not even to criticize, but to request for more than what is being offered to you, you're seen as a problem. The private sector has also begun using the same whip like government. So it is a replication of disempowerment that we are creating a big uncritical mass of people who are, they can't be unempowered because they are highly educated, but because they are mediocres, because we have locked them to food. I don't know, they are in a deep litter system kind of rearing. They don't want to think beyond their comfort zone. that they are producing. My daughter is going to be in Uganda here, join school. She will be exploited for sex to get a job. How will I feel comfortable if I died and I was not there to get her a job? So, with all these conversations, is why I always beseech our viewers that we need to get a reflection. We don't come here that we hate those who are eating alone. It is their right. Even us, we eat food. I may not eat chicken, but I'll go and serve myself beans. Isn't it food? Won't I sleep if I slept on popcorn and we ate a buffet? We have all eaten supper. But let's not eat supper at the expenses of others suffering, yet they contribute to whatever you're eating. Let's have an equity. So I need to appreciate you, our production team, and Center for Constitutional Governance. I wish you a blessed week. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ivan, for that very conclusive closing. Claver, Melody, and Patrick for taking time and having this very interesting conversation. I got emotional in the middle of the show, having this conversation and realizing the kind of country we are in and looking at the massive suffering, just massive suffering. It is something as young people, when even we are involved in the political process, if we are not critical of other people's suffering, if we do not own other people's suffering, then we should really think back and wonder where this country is going. But alas, it's been a very interesting conversation. Thank you all. To the production crew, Ronald and Brittany for making this possible, Civic Space TV, but also to Center for Constitutional Governance. Thank you very much for giving young people a platform to air out their views. And to our dear able viewers for always religiously following. My name is Douglas Drake Onen. See you next week, same time, same place. Bye-bye.